Hi, my name is Joe Sandusky. I've been a guitar instructor for over 30 years. Today we're going to do a deep dive into modes. Just recently I had a student come to me who had studied with another guitar instructor, a very prominent jazz guitar player and educator, who had him learn his scales across the entire fretboard and modes across the entire fretboard. And so he comes to me and says, I know all my modes everywhere on the fretboard. I said, great, well, let's look at something. Play me a 2-octave C major scale, and he does. I said, now stay in that same position and play me just a 1-octave D Dorian scale. He does a D Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian, and then B Locrian. And he plays it, and I said, you realize you didn't change any notes, right? Everything you played was out of the C major scale. He's like, no, it's not. And I said, yeah, it is. And so he plays it again on his own, and he's playing it, and I'll kind of demonstrate what happened. He comes down like this, he goes, I just wasted 3 years of my life. I felt really bad for him. He was kind of right. But not really, because you learn your whole fretboard, and if you learn your notes, it's great. The problem is that modes can be used in different ways, and sometimes thinking modally makes a lot of sense, and sometimes thinking modally doesn't make as much sense. So let's talk about what modes are. So a little history lesson on the modes, and this is a very oversimplification of history, but it gives you the idea. So modes started with Gregorian chant, which predates notation. We're talking about the 9th and 10th century, roughly 1,000 plus years ago. And it was started in the Roman Catholic Church, so you had these priests that were all doing these chants, and everyone's saying the same notes, right? We don't have chordal harmony yet, right? So everyone's just singing the same notes. And what they would do, they would take a pitch, and then they would sing intervals above and below the pitch. At this time in music history, we are not equal temperament, meaning that modern music, every note is the same distance pitch-wise from the other. That was not always the case, okay? And it's really hard for people to wrap their head around. But they were taking pitches and they were doing intervals off of those pitches, right? And when you only have a couple of dozen songs, a couple of dozen chants, pretty easy for everyone to just memorize them. There's no reason to write anything down. As the repertoires got bigger, notation starts to come into play later on. But more importantly, they just started categorizing them, right? So I'm going to make up a title. It's Latin, right? So we're going to do the chant Ipidus, Dipidus, Hominis, whatever, right? And one priest says to the other priest, which one is that one? And they can say, it's in Dorian, it's in Mixolydian, right? They can tell you, by them saying what the mode was, it would help the other priest help remember the melody. And that's really what it was used for. So now we're in Bach's time period, late 1700s, so roughly 800 to maybe even close to 1,000 years later. Bach writes the Well-Tempered Clavier, which was proof to the world that he had figured out how to tune the keyboard instrument in a way that you could play in all keys. The equal temperament I talked about before, where every pitch is the same distance away, which does put some intervals in and out of tune. The history of tuning is a very interesting subject to research. But anyways, so he invents the tuning system for the keyboard instruments. The other instruments follow suit as time wears on. And here we are today, in which the modes have now been reduced to just playing a major scale, starting on a note other than the root note of the major scale, and playing to that octave. So in the key of C, right, all the white keys of the piano, playing the C to C is called C major. It's also called C Ionian. That's the modal name for it. And then if you play from D to D, that's Dorian. If I played from E to E, that'd be Phrygian, F to F is Lydian, G to G is Mixolydian, A to A is Aeolian, and B to B is Locrian. So the names, we just kept the names because we love tradition and music. We kept the names, the old Latin names for all of these modes. Now, modes still, these are not just theoretical concepts. Songs are in modes, okay? And that's when you really want to be thinking and understanding your modes, is when songs are in modes. Though sometimes even then you don't necessarily need to understand modes. So one of the most famous modal songs is this one. and the other songs that use the same chord progression, which is Werewolves of London, Sweet Child of Mine. There's a bunch of them, okay? But it's in this case, in this key, it's D to C to G. Those chords, G, C, and D, are the primary chords in a key of G, but G doesn't sound like home bass, right? So if I played, I'll play a G after the progression. Does that sound like home to you, or does D sound like home? I'll play D at the end. That's home, right? So, did the guy who wrote Sweet Home Alabama, Leonard Skinner, understand modes? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, it's not necessarily necessary to understand modes to play over those songs, but those songs are in modes, and there's many pop songs in modes. You just Google it, you can find a ton of them. Okay, so if a song is in a mode, then understanding the modes makes a lot of sense. You could probably still get away with knowing the parent key and then understanding the chord progression, which we're going to get into. Movie music is in modes all over the place. They use modes probably the most legitimately, right? They'll play a harmony or a chord progression, and that is in a mode, and then they will make melodies in those modes, and each one of those modes has a different sound to it, a different emotion, a different mood to it, and they utilize that a lot in movie music. So if you're a movie composer, understanding your modes and modal progressions are really really important. And again, modal progressions is also something you can Google. There's for different modes, there's different common chord progressions that will really point the ear to a note other than the root of the major scale sounding like home, just like Sweet Home Alabama did. Okay? So in those cases, knowing your modes is important. Now, it's used a lot in jazz education, and it's becoming rock because rock also changes keys, so progressive rock, more fusion rock, right? So any kind of complex music, a lot of people use modes as a way to teach you to improvise over those chord progressions. This is where it becomes an issue. This goes back to my student, right? Knew all the modes and didn't know how to apply them. Okay, so here's the problem. You got a progression that is in a key. Okay, so the most common one in jazz is one called 2-5-1, and we're going to stay in C because it's easy. Okay, so you have a D minor chord, a G7 chord, and a C major 7 chord. Okay. D minor is the second chord in the key of C, right? Because C, D, and the second chord in a major scale is a minor chord. Then it's G7, okay, which is the fifth scale degree, C, D, E, F, G. And then the fifth position is called a dominant chord, which means it's a major chord, but if you make it a seventh chord, the seventh is a whole step away from the root, not a half step. So in a major seventh, let's say G, on a G major 7 would have an F sharp in it, a G dominant or just G7 would have an F natural in it, so it's staying in the key of C, and of course C major is in the key of C. So why not just play in the key of C? Seems like you should be able to do that. Let's find out if you can. I have a little backing track. That don't sound good at all, right? Because you're not thinking about what chords you're on. So some people who were trying to teach jazz education said, let's use the modes, right? Especially in a book, it's really easy to say a minor chord. So if it's D minor, you play a D Dorian. Minor equals Dorian. If it's a dominant chord, it's a seventh chord, G7. If it's a major chord, it's Ionian or major, right? And it was a way to make it very one-to-one in a book, okay? And maybe on other instruments, I know my horn player friends do better with modes than guitar players do. But so if you use it as an ear training exercise, it's great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the backing track back on, and I'm just going to play a D Dorian, a G Mixolydian, and a C Ionian. It's all the same notes. I'm just starting on the root, playing up to the root and coming back down, or going up, and then I can go up and down on the C. So you'll see what I'm talking about. Now that all sounded fine, right? All those notes sounded good. It sounded way better than just playing the C major scale without any thought. right? But it's very predictable. Do 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 do. Right? You're playing the scale, and I knew this when I was learning this stuff, that it was all you know, starting on a different note of a major scale. But I figured there was a reason for it when I was learning it, and I was severely disappointed, because what they would tell you next is don't start on the root. That's not hip. Okay, so now what? So now I'm going to think about 3 different scale names for the same scale and not start on the root, and it's all going to work out? Well, let's find out. How well did that work out? Right? I mean, it's okay. Does it sound good? Does it sound like something you want to listen to? It doesn't really, right? Okay, so what's the solution for playing over changes like this? The solution is learn arpeggios, okay? And then you want to be thinking about what chords you're on when you're playing out of the major scale. Okay, you can't just play the major scale. We've proven that, right? So on the D, I know in this position, actually I'll do it up here where you can see better. So I know in this position, a D minor 7 arpeggio is right here, a G G7 arpeggio is right here, right, and then C major 7 is right there. So if I know that, and I know what chord I'm on, I'm paying attention to what chord I'm on, I can be aware of where the chord tones are and make my lines make sense to that. And let's hear how that sounds. Right, that sounds way better, and it sounds more musical, and I did not use any chromaticism, anything fancy. I didn't play anything fast, right? That's just, you know, it's very rhythmical, and that sounds great. And then of course later on, for another video, we can talk about adding in chromaticism and things like that. But the best thing to do if you're trying to play over changes is not to think modally, but think the chord progressions. Understanding your modes theoretically, understanding your modes as far as progressions for composition, excellent, excellent. But for playing over chord changes, you're probably just better off thinking about the arpeggio. Another thing that gets confusing with modes on the guitar is that people refer to scale positions as modes. So now we're going to put the modes onto the fretboard and show you the most common fingering. The way these fingerings are set up is so that the notes are evenly distributed across all the strings, or more evenly distributed, okay? So we start and end on our second finger, which is a little strange at first, but let me show you the reasoning behind it. So if we started with G with our first finger, and then we played through a G scale, we end up with 3 notes on 4 of the strings. The second and last string has 2 notes, and the last string has 1 note. If you start with your second finger on G, it's a little bit more evenly distributed. You have 2 notes on the low string, you have 2 notes on the high string, 2 notes on the B string, and the other ones have 3. So it's fairly evenly distributed, and you stop and end on the same finger. And I think that's why they decided to utilize that idea of starting with your second finger as the note in which the mode starts on. So let's take a closer look at these fingerings. Now we're playing in position. There will be some stretches, but for this first one, there are no stretches. So your first finger's covering 2nd fret, second finger's covering 3rd fret, third finger's covering 4th fret, and pinky or 4th finger's covering 5th fret, okay? So you're gonna put your second finger on the 3rd fret, which is G, and then your pinky's gonna play the A, which is on the 5th fret. Next string, you got a B with your first finger on the 2nd fret, C, second finger, 3rd fret, D, 4th finger, 5th fret. Next string, you've got first finger, 2nd fret, which is in E, F sharp with your 3rd finger on the 4th fret, pinky on the 5th fret. Same finger pattern for this next string. A with your first finger on the 2nd fret. B, 3rd finger, 4th fret. Pinky, 4th finger, 5th fret. Second to last string, the B string. 2nd finger on the D, which is 3rd fret. and the E, which is pinky on the 5th fret. Last string, first finger on the 2nd fret, which is F sharp, and then second finger on the G with on the 3rd fret, 2nd finger. Okay, so that's the full G scale, G to G. So that's G major. In the modal language, it's G Ionian, okay? Now, but if we want to really learn that position, we're ignoring an A, that's right here, okay? And an F sharp, that's right there. The reason they edit those two notes out is they want you to start and end on the root note of the scalar mode. But if you're improvising, you're gonna want to know those notes are there. So there's an A here on the 5th fret with your pinky and an F sharp. Down below, first finger, 2nd fret. And if you notice, if you add those two notes, then your 2 E strings, your low string and your high string, had the exact same fingering. But when you practice those, you want to add those notes in, because when you're improvising, you want to know those notes are available to you. But also when you're practicing, you don't want to lose the sound of the scale. So you still want to start on G. You can go as high up as you can, in this case, up one extra note to the A, come back down to the lowest note, and then come back to the G, which is only one note above in this case, but in other forms it'll be differently. So when you play it, you're going to play it like this. Start on the G, go up to that A, all the way back down to the F sharp, back up to the G. And then that gets your ear used to hearing the G as being the root. Now in this case, because we're playing Ionian, which is the same as major, we don't have to worry about thinking about it as both a mode and the parent key, because they're really one and the same. This next one, which is going to be Dorian, you can practice in two different ways, which I'll show you. This particular fingering uses stretches. So first finger is going to cover both the 3rd and 4th fret. Second finger will cover the 5th fret. Third finger will cover the 6th fret, and pinky or 4th finger will cover the 7th fret. So once again, we're starting with our second finger. So second finger on the 5th fret, and then pinky on the 7th fret. Next string, C on the 3rd fret with the first finger, D with your second finger on the 5th fret, E with your pinky on the 7th fret. Now on the next string, your first finger is going to cover the 4th fret. So 4th fret on the D string or 4th string, second finger on the 5th fret, pinky on the 7th fret. Same finger pattern for the next string. First finger, 4th fret, second finger, 5th fret, pinky, 7th fret. This one only has 2 notes on this string. Second finger on the 5th fret, pinky on the 7th fret. The last string, you have a note on the 3rd fret with your first finger, so you're stretching down, and then pinky on the 2nd finger. So the whole scale from A to A, which would make it an A Dorian scale, is this. Okay, but that's also a G scale. You got a G right there, and you got the B up here. Okay, now when you play this scale, you could go, if you want to just play a G scale, I mean, that is G to G, that's the G scale. But you have those 2 notes available to you, so you might as well put those in. So the way I would practice it is from starting on G, all the way up to the B, back down. Because if you do that, you're still going to hear the G. So I would practice it starting on A to A and thinking that A Dorian sound. And then also from G up to the B, back down for the G major sound. Okay, so now we're gonna do the 3rd position of the G major scale, or the 3rd mode, which is Phrygian, okay? Once again, we're in position, but there are stretches. So first finger is gonna cover both the 5th and 6th fret. Pinky will cover the 7th fret. Third finger will cover the 8th fret, and pinky or 4th finger will cover the 9th fret. Again, we're gonna start with our second finger and do the mode first. So you've got B with your second finger, and then C with your 3rd finger. Only just that little half step. B, C. Next string, you're going to stretch down. So first finger on the 5th fret, second on the 7th fret, and pinky on the 9th fret. Same finger pattern for the next string. You're going to have first finger 5th fret, second on the 7th fret, pinky or 4th finger on the 9th fret. Okay? On the next string, again, same finger pattern. First finger, 5th fret. Second finger, 7th. Pinky, 9th. Okay, now we got a half step in here. We're going to play with our second finger on the F sharp, which is the 7th fret. And then your third finger on the 8th fret. And then a stretch down again to the A. First finger on the 5th fret. Second finger on the 7th. And that would be B Phrygian. Okay, now what you can do is you could play that to a backing track with a B minor chord playing, and you can really help yourself get your ear training. You can do this with all the scales. I've got a B minor chord going, and I'm going to play that scale, making sure I'm starting on a downbeat. And you would use that as an ear training exercise so that you can hear those modes. So now we're going to take a look at that same fingering and play it as a G major scale. Okay? So the G is on the 5th fret on the 4th string. So you start on the G, which is on the 5th fret of the 4th string. Go all the way through the form. You're going to stop on that C and come back down. Come back to G, and now your ear hears it as a G scale. And then if you play a G chord behind it, again, start on that G. And your ear will hear that as a G major scale. And you can do that with all of them. Play a G chord behind them, start on G, end on G, or play the chord that fits the mode and play the mode from its root to its root. So for the first scale, the G scale, you play a G chord behind it because the mode and the parent key share the same root. They're both Gs. When you get to the next one, which is Dorian, you'll play a minor chord. In the case of G, it's an A minor chord. Okay? And then for the Phrygian, again, a minor chord, it's a B minor in the case of this key. And then for the 4 chord, or the 4th scale up, that's Lydian, so you'll play a C major chord. And then you'll play a D dominant chord for Mixolydian. You'll play another minor chord for the Aeolian, which is E Aeolian. And then F sharp minor 7 flat 5, or a 3-note F sharp diminished chord, and you'll have the notes for the F sharp Locrian. I won't demonstrate that because it's going to take too much time, but you by all means can put a backing track together and play those for ear training, which was the whole point of this, which was to train your ears for modes and also understand the parent key. So now we're going to do the 4th position up, or the 4th mode, which is Lydian. Once again, we're starting with our second finger, and we're in position, and this one does stay in position. So we're going to have our first finger covering the 7th fret, the second finger covering the 8th fret, third finger covers 9, and then pinky covers 10. So now we're starting with C on the 8th fret with our second finger, pinky on the D. Then we're going to the next string, first finger on the 7th fret, third finger on the 9th fret, and then pinky on the 10th fret. Next string, we've got first finger on the 7th fret, third finger on the 9th fret, pinky on the 10th fret. So same pattern as the last string. This string will only have 2 notes on it. So first finger on the 7th fret, which is D, and then third finger on the E, which is 9th fret. Next string, first finger on the 7th fret, which is F sharp. Second finger on the 8th, which is G. Pinky on the 10th fret, which is A. High string, first finger on the 7th fret, second finger on the 8th fret. That's taking us from C to C, and that is C Lydian. Okay, now if you want to play it as a G scale, your first G is on the 10th fret of the A string with your pinky, so you start at that G. play up as high as you can, all the way back down to the B, back up to the G. And that'll train your ears for G major or C Lydian, depending on what chord you have behind you. So now we're going to do the fifth mode, or the fifth position in the G major scale, depending upon how you're looking at it. Once again, we'll be starting with our second finger, but before we get started, let's talk about the position. In this position, first finger will cover 8th or 9th fret. Second finger will cover the 10th, the third will cover the 11th, and the pinky will cover the 12th. The 12th is your double dot. If you're looking up your fretboard, you have a dot on basically all the odd frets, and then you have a double dot at the 12th fret. That is the same note as the open note up an octave, okay? So that's an E, that's an E, that's an A, that's an A, just up an octave. So here we go. We're going to start with our second finger on the 10th fret, which is D, pinky on the 12th, which is E. Next string, first finger on the 9th fret, which is F sharp, second finger on the G, which is 10th fret, and then A with your pinky on the 12th fret. Next string, you got B on the 9th fret, second finger on the 10th, pinky on the 12th, so same as the last string. Next string, first finger on the 9th fret, third finger on the 11th fret, pinky on the 12th fret. Next string, you're going to have second finger on the 10th fret, pinky on the 12th. Last string, stretching down to the 8th fret with our first finger, second finger on the 10th, pinky on the 12th. So going D to D. I have D Dorian. Now, if I want to play it as a G scale, I need to start on the G, which is under my second finger on the 5th string. So 10th fret on the 5th string. You play up as high as you can, just like we did before. All the way down to the C, and then back up to the G. So again, play a G chord behind that, or play a D7 behind it, and play D to D. So now we're going to do the sixth mode, or sixth position of the major scale. The sixth mode is called Aeolian. In this case, it's an E Aeolian. Aeolian is also known as natural minor. Let's take a look at the position. Our first finger is going to cover both the 10th or the 11th fret. Our second finger will cover the 12th. Third finger will cover the 11th fret, and pinky or fourth finger will cover the 14th fret. So we're starting with our second finger on E, 12th fret, pinky on the F sharp, which is 14th fret. Next string, first finger, 10th fret, which is G. Middle finger, second finger on the 12th fret, which is A. And then pinky on the 14th fret, which is B. Next string is the same finger pattern. You have C on the 10th fret, D on the 12th fret, second finger, and then E with your pinky on the 14th fret. Next string, first finger 13th fret, and then second finger on the 12th fret, and then pinky on the 14th fret. Next string starts with our second finger on the B, which is 12th fret, and then C with our third finger, 13th fret. Last string, you got a D, first finger, first finger, 10th fret, and then middle finger on the 12th fret, pinky on the 14th fret, which is F sharp. Remember, we're only going to go to E originally, right? And that D, which was on the 10th fret on the high E string, is also down there on the low E string. But to play it as a mode, to play it as E Aeolian, we're going to start on E and end on E, and it's going to look like this. Okay, if you want to play it as a G scale, so starting on G at the 10th fret of the 5th string, you play all the way up, and there is actually a G, one fret up, and you might want to go ahead and play that just to help your ears out. All the way down, back up to G. So now we're on the last one, which is the 7th position, or the 7th mode. The 7th mode is called Locrian. Let's first look at our position. So this one stays almost in position. Our pinky is going to change in this one. So first finger covers the 12th fret, second finger covers 13th, third finger covers the 14th fret, pinky covers the 15th fret, and on one string it'll be the 16th fret. Actually, that one string is kind of different all the way around. First finger will cover the 12th fret, but then you're going to use your second finger for the 14th fret. We'll see that when we get there. So we're going to start on F sharp. Easiest way to play that is with our third finger. So this one's strange in a couple of different ways. So you're going to start with the F sharp on your third finger on the 14th fret, pinky on the 15th fret, which is G. Okay, next string, A, 12th fret, first finger, B, third finger, 14th fret, pinky on the 15th fret. Next string, this is the one that's a little different, first finger on the 12th fret, second finger on the 14th fret, pinky on the 16th fret. That takes us to the 12th fret on the G string, which is G, and then A with our second finger, and then next string, B with on the 12th fret with our first finger, C with our second finger on the 13th fret, and then D on the 15th fret. Last string, E on the 12th fret, first finger, F sharp on the 14th fret, and of course you have a G up there on the 15th fret. When we play it as G, we'll play that note. When we're playing Locrian, we won't. So the 7th scale degree mode is called Locrian, and it goes, in this case, in G, would go from F sharp to F sharp, so it would sound like this. Okay, to play it as a G, you're just going to want to start with your pinky and go ahead and play up to that high G, right, and then back down up again. So it will sound like this. So now you know all 7 positions of the G scale, or of any major scale, because you can move these obviously around to different frets and play them in different keys, and then you also know and understand the modes. So if you found this video helpful and you'd like to take lessons, I do offer online lessons. So it's a one-on-one live video lesson, just like a private lesson you would have, but it's online via Zoom or via FaceTime. And I do offer a free introductory lesson. It's completely free, no strings attached, no credit card, no nothing. You can just sign up for what's called a consultation lesson. It's a half an hour. We'll meet on Zoom, get you used to the technology, get everything right. I can hear you play, and I can give you an idea of what I would do to help you play. And if you like it, you can sign up. I hope to see you in one of those lessons or the next video.